With Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Right Side Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Right Side Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Right Side studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Thursday, which around here we call Friday Eve. And Boomer's on the board. Hey, bud, how you doing? You forgot your. See, you laugh at me when I
pushed the slider instead of the mute button.
Too many buttons. Too many buttons.
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
Glad you're here.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Boomer laughs at me because every once in a while I forget to unmute my mic, so it's enjoyable when I get to laugh back. So
I know. I like. It's rare that I forget to push a button.
I will admit that it's rare. It is rare.
It's not that rare.
It is rare. Hey, listen, we got a great show for you lined up today. 3 o'clock today, Congressman Barry Moore, one of the more conservative members of our Alabama delegation, will be calling in. Congressman Moore has been in the thick of things. They've just fought to get the vaccine mandate pulled in the House, which is where he is, obviously. And now we're hoping for good things in the Senate. That, among other things, we'll talk to Congressman Barry Moore at 3 o'clock and get his take on the machinations going on up in D.C. And all that to say, I got a triple dipper that's filled up with some stuff you're going to want to know about, so hit it, Boomer.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you have got to know as we run today's show. Number 1, my monologue and my first dipper are going to kind of tie together. Merit-based hiring. Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to the idea of hiring the best candidate for the job, especially in government? Wouldn't that be a novel thing if we were not actually a cacistocracy? Just, a cacistocracy, a government run by the least competent of its citizens. Well, sometimes it feels that way, and some of that is based on the fact that we're dealing with an administration, especially right now, that is just totally blown off the idea of merit-based hiring. They're trying to break the glass ceiling on every perceived glass ceiling there is, and it's amazing to watch. We'll talk about it. Merit-based hiring. Number 2, Bidenflation. Yeah, we're going to run down that road because there's been a whole lot of new information that's come out in the last 24 hours. The Fed has met. Interest rates are going up. Prices are still staying the same. And we're looking at situations, around the nation right now where people are paying more just for the most basic commodities. And yet Biden said yesterday or the day before that his economic policies are working because inflation is not as high as it was last month. Well, I guess that means it's trending in the right direction, but daggum. So, yeah, we'll talk about it. Bidenflation, number 2. And then number 3, I saw a segment last night on Sean Hannity. I actually got a clip from Sean talking about it because he said exactly what I was feeling. Have you noticed that suddenly we have a southern border? Suddenly, everyone has woken up to the fact that we have a southern border problem. Well, where have they been? And we'll talk about that. Number 3 on the Triple Dipper, what's going on down there? Suddenly, we have a border. But hey, let me jump over to my comments for the day. All right, my opening monologue here. I'll be honest with you, I've had some experiences at hiring and firing over the years, right? And one of the lessons that I learned the hard way caused me to coin a phrase that I use personally that I will, quote, I will hire the person before the resume. But by saying that, I'm not talking about their external qualities. I'm referring to the strength of their character, who they are as a real person. And once I'm satisfied the person is the kind of person that brings true value to the team, then I go to the next thing, which is their actual qualifications. The things that are on their resume, like skills, education, experience. To put it in HR terms, it's the background check comes first and then the resume comes next. It's the basics of merit-based employment. That you hire someone not on their appearance or how it makes your company look to outsiders, but on what makes your organization the most effective at what it is supposed to be doing. If we don't demand that our government return to the idea of finding the best person for the job, then we will continue to receive mediocrity and, at worst, actual disaster. I had an experience once that pretty much galvanized me into the belief that a person should never be given a position that they had no right or capability to perform. On my second deployment to the global war on terror, this time to Baghdad, I had my team augmented with several individuals with whom I had never worked before. One of them A dude seemed kind of solid. He seemed like he knew his stuff. It was his second deployment as well. He jumped right in during what I quickly discovered was a honeymoon period. As time went on, though, he became more and more disruptive, belligerent even. His communications became short, and it came to a head when he bucked my authority during a very dicey combat operation late one night in central Baghdad. So I wrote him up. A counseling statement for the record to establish what I was concerned would need to be a paper trail if it continued. Well, that didn't sit well with him, and the behavior did not change. In the coming weeks, I finally took steps and had him relieved of his duties in the war zone, and I sent him packing with all his bags and baggage to our battalion headquarters. That's when I began to get word from others that, oh, by the way, mine was not the first team that he'd been kicked off of. Oh, really? Do tell. Because that was not on the record for unwitting future bosses like me to see. Turns out he had been relieved of duty on his team in Afghanistan, too. So I submitted all the counseling statements, and then I prepared to write his officer evaluation report since he had technically been under my rating scheme long enough, but I was told I could not do it, that it would be done by someone else. I was not satisfied, so I submitted a memorandum for record of the information that I would have included in his evaluation. And to my shock and amazement, I learned a few weeks later he was actually given his own team in another part of the area of operations. By the end of the tour, his new team couldn't stand him, and he refused to come to their award ceremony when they received their commendations and medals for their time in the war zone. Well, it was that singular experience that convinced me to never allow myself to be forced into hiring someone simply because of their external qualifications. When someone's allowed to have a position of responsibility without the truth of their character or their abilities or their actual experiences being at the forefront, well, everyone loses. That guy was on my team creating havoc in the war zone because someone in his past saw fit just to let it ride and let future bosses deal with it. And that guy on his own team, after being dismissed from two others, he got his own team simply because someone else didn't want to deal with it. That is the antithesis of merit-based hiring. Well, the Biden administration has taken poor hiring practices to entirely new levels in a desperate effort to break every perceived glass ceiling, every one, to merely check off the blocks of perceived outward intersectionalities, they call them. To advance the liberal cause of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the Biden administration has saddled the American people with one questionable hire after another. Like, for instance, we'll talk about it more in detail in a minute, but we now have the first Supreme Court justice who was advanced for confirmation by the Biden team solely on the first hurdle that she was a black woman. Now, certainly she's a jurist, she has a strong resume, and that should have been enough. But do we know for a fact that she was the best possible candidate for the job when everyone who was not a black woman was immediately excluded? It puts an asterisk by her hire, in my opinion, and it demeans her, for that matter. We have a press secretary that draws the ire of the White House press corps on a daily basis for reading her pre-planned responses and treating members of the press dismissively, even rudely. So much so that one member went on a national broadcast the other day. I watched it in amazement as he pointed out how rude and ill-equipped she is and that she had been openly discriminating against him for daring to ask hard questions. But hey, she did break the glass ceiling as the first ever openly gay black female press secretary, to which they took a victory lap, right? How important is that? There you go. How about the now former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Spent Fuel and Waste Disposition in the Office of Nuclear Energy? There's a title. With a top secret clearance, mind you. He crowed to the world at large how he had been proud to have been the breaker of the glass ceiling of all glass ceilings as the first non-binary cross-dressing Deputy Assistant Secretary of anything. And he's now facing felony charges for theft and grand larceny that could net him 15 years in prison. Never mind that his far too open book life should have been disqualifying him for a clearance or a position of any kind in government. What with all of his noted positions on keeping information from parents of children in schools that he used to work in, or his lecture series on gay kink and fetish, and the constant parade of photos on every form of media of him in outlandish garb and even with bondage gear. You see, these are the kind of things that happen when a hiring process is more concerned with breaking glass ceilings than they are with creating an effective organization. It is one thing to be an advocate for equal pay for women for equal work done. It's an important thing that handicapped individuals are not excluded from positions that can otherwise reasonably accommodate their handicaps. No one should ever be told they cannot have a job because of their skin color or their religion. But when we move past that point and we flip the script altogether, and that we say that hiring is now based on whether you have enough people on the rolls of a certain skin color, or that your hiring is tainted by a need to be seen as having enough LGBTQ staffers, especially when all else about the person's past is disregarded in order to bring the focus to their outward intersectionalities, well, then merit-based hiring is gone. And we are no longer hiring the best candidates. And that, my friends, is how you form a cacistocracy. We have allowed DEI to go from diversity, equity, and inclusion to actually stand for destruction, exhaustion, and implosion. The Biden administration needs to get away from trying to find the next glass ceiling to break, because glass ceilings, they're not really all they're cracked up to be. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Well, there you have it. I mean, I look around at some of the hiring process, and they cannot seem to get past it. There are some stories that I'm going to bring out in this first part of the Triple Dipper that just they're going to curl your hair. I mean, it ain't good, y'all. When you hire someone for a job, they should be a person of the right character and qualifications, period. Let there not be a glass ceiling that we should be concerning ourselves with any further. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. Solid conservative, just plain right, making it cool to be a conservative. Well, hey, listen, by the way, the text lines are open. Several people have already jumped in. 833-687-4448. You can also call in on that number, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. And I see I got a caller on line one. Is that Allie? Allie from Athens. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well, and you made me laugh out loud. First of all, I want to commend you. I want to commend you on the joke about the glass ceiling not being all that it's cracked up.
I'm glad
Very
somebody
nice,
got
Colonel.
that. Thank you very much.
I got that, and I get you also subtle Yodas when you do those too. And you have my permission to introduce Woka, that character, anytime you want to. So my question to you, sir, is I'm wondering if I got to have that team leader that you were talking about, because I had one. I mean, the reason that I was able to forge such strong relationships with the soldiers is I had either that guy's twin, and here's what happened. When I got in theater, I mean, I can get along with just about everybody, and I really tried, but this guy was something. And I demonstrated some initiative and landed an agreement with the client to do a historical tour of BIOP and show the various things so that the Joes and Janes could understand what they were doing and why they were doing it. And that included filming Alfal Palace. And so we did that, and I think I made the guy nervous, but he became more and more and more abusive to the point where he sequestered me in the library at 51 on South Victory. And I was not allowed to come out. I was not allowed to interact. And finally, the client and the company issued the closest thing to a restraining order. I mean, I used the time well. I made what I was told was one of the best libraries in theater, but it was bizarre. Got to be the colonel to the Lord. I mean, it was amazing stuff that got to happen in that library. But man,
Allie, I'll tell you, and I'll get with you offline about this to confirm, because I'm not going to say his name on the air. But my recollection was he did come up to your neck of the woods. That's where he was assigned. And I'll be curious to find out if it was the same guy.
That would be wild. That would be wild.
That
he
would
finally
be.
got busted because they shipped him out, like you know what I'm talking about. And what finally sent him packing was in his suit, he just had all this workout. He had all this workout equipment, all kinds of stuff, and he never showed up to work.
Yeah, I don't know, but we'll find out, Allie. I'm going to get with you later on offline, and we'll text back and forth or call you or something and find out. But
sounds good.
All right, my friend. Thanks much. Yeah.
You're welcome back.
Bye-bye. Yeah, that would be crazy. I mean, for background there, if you're not familiar with the show, Allie's a regular caller, and we found out that we were both in Baghdad at the same time. She was over there serving troops, and I was one of the troops, and we were in and around some of the same places. And knowing where she was, I can't help but wonder if perhaps the guy was there. I don't know. But we'll find out. I'm curious. But yeah, I mean, you look at some of the things that have gone on with the hiring processes, and it's like deliberate discrimination. What Boomer? What were we talking about the other day when there was something about? Oh, I know what it was. It was that school board member up in Pennsylvania refused to vote for a guy to be president because he was a cis white male.
Oh yeah, the cis white male. Yeah, too many.
I guess I don't. By the way, for any of our fans, I don't want a sign that says cis white male studio, but that's what we are. I mean, that would mean that you and I are not qualified to be on any boards because we're a cis white male.
Nope, we're not qualified.
God. First of all, cisgender. That implies that there are other means of being gendered, so stop that. White, that's the way God made you. Male, that's the way God made you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
You know what? You know what my pronouns are, too? They're, by God, whatever the English language says they should be. There. That's it.
Boom. Mic drop.
Just stop. But yeah, so we're going to get into this stuff in a minute. Some of the things that I talked about in my monologue, I'll refresh again with a little more detail. Some of them, though, I've got some news stories, And some things like, what did Pelosi say about why they lost the 2010 elections? Who does she blame? Well, you can see where I'm going with this. Or what about the university that just announced its hiring practices? Curious. We'll see where that goes. But it's just amazing to me that liberals will push for laws that protect people from being disenfranchised in the hiring process. And then what do? They turn around and flip the script, and it's okay if they disenfranchise during the hiring process as long as it meets their intersectionalities. If you're not familiar with that, the term intersectionalities simply refers to the idea that they find all these little subgroups. They'll find a million subgroups. There's your gender. There's your gender identity. There's what are you within your gender identity. There's are you handicapped. There's are you of a certain skin color. There's are you, and they'll go on down the line. And then if you have more than one, like for instance, the whole cis white male, that's multiple of the bad intersectionalities. We qualify for nothing because it's a cis white male. But they take and they stack them all up. And then the goal becomes how many stacked up intersectionality, how many things that intersect can you find? Well, it's ridiculous. It totally gets away from the idea that the person may have worked hard all their life to earn the right to have a certain job. They may have worked hard to prove themselves. And when you demean them to the extent that, well, you got hired because of your sexual orientation, we needed more of you guys on our roster. You have just demeaned the person and said that they would not otherwise have gotten the job had you not lowered the bar to receive them. That's wrong. And I'll be honest with you, some of the folks that get those kind of jobs, they ought to sue for being degraded like that. Just saying. All right, we're going to come right back. Merit-based hiring. What does that even mean anymore? We'll talk about it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. And then top of the hour, Congressman Barry Moore on the line. Hang tight. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. I'm talking about this show goes way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi, thrown in just for good measure. Hey, listen, I'm in number one of the it's hot in the studio, Boomer. What the heck, man?
It's so hot in here.
I'm just sitting here getting mad because I'm hot.
I know.
It's December. Why I just had to go out there and
chilly and feeling good.
the thermostat was set on heat, which would not seem unreasonable by the calendar, but it's like 74 degrees in here, and the heat was on.
I think it's actually hotter in the studio than 74.
There's a lot of hot air in the studio.
There's a lot of hot air in the studio.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try not to get angry and hot. All right. I got some textures on the line, by the way. We're talking about merit-based hiring. John from Huntsville says, if I was hiring somebody for a job, the first two questions I would ask is, can you define what a man is, and can you define what a woman is? If they say no, they cannot, then I've got one word for them. Next. So there's that one. Frank from Huntsville, he also texted in and says, if equality is what it's wanted, then race and gender shouldn't even be asked about on an application. Okay, I'm good with that. I get it. And let me make sure you're clear, too, everybody. I mean, you're allowed to have, the law calls them BFOQs, bona fide occupational qualifications, things that, might actually seem discriminatory, but they're necessary to the job. For instance, in the military, you're required to be able to pass a PT test, right? Physical training test. To be a fireman, you may have to be required to climb a ladder and to be able to carry the equivalent of I forgot what the standards were, but like a 75-pound roll of hose up a ladder. There's different things that come into play, and they're called bona fide occupational qualifications. Well, those things I decided someone who is wheelchair-bound may not be able to do those things just by their very nature, but they're still a bona fide occupational qualification. Maybe literacy could be one. If you're being hired to be an editor, you have to be able to read and write and pass a proficiency test potentially. All things come into play. What never should come into play are the things that have already been bound by the law and protected. Things like discrimination related to pregnancy or gender or religion, and so that being said, and handicaps. So that being said. And even in a handicap situation, if someone says I was not discriminated against because if they could not do what's called a reasonable accommodation, that's the standard. In other words, they don't have to build an elevator into a building they don't own in order to get you upstairs. If it's outside of their control, it's not reasonable for them to do so. So that kind of thing can come into play too. But that's not what we're talking about. Everything I just mentioned there was reasonable and should be expected in a civil society. What I'm talking about right now is the left's view that everything is related to race or gender identity. And oh, by the way, the one that I'm going to read to you in just a minute is maybe your racial identity. What? Yes. How about this? Here's this first story I've got. This is kind of what kicked me off in my preparation for the show. Fox News, December 14th, that'd be yesterday. Pelosi told Obama that Dems lost the House in 2010 because white men got in a mood when they don't have jobs. What? That's it. Nobody else was mad in the world. It was just the white guys that lost their jobs, and that's what happens. So yeah, faced with catastrophic losses in the 2010 midterms, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told then President Barack Obama that Democrats were pulverized at the ballot box because of the white male thing, a new documentary reveals. By the way, the documentary was created for her by her daughter, Alexandria Pelosi. Yeah, isn't that special? So anyway, the phone call went on November 2nd. Hello, Mr. President, not a good night after the elections. And the documentary was being filmed, yada, yada. It talks about the fact that all these things that happened in the elections, they lost badly. And on the phone, with Obama, Pelosi told him that Democrats shouldn't consider their wipeout as a referendum on his health care reform. Oh, Obamacare, that had nothing to do with it. She blamed white males upset with high unemployment rates for Democratic losses. Her words, the white male thing, it's just a dominant thing. When they don't have a job, they get in a mood. And so we'll have to make some decisions in our caucus about how we go forward. I read that to you not because that was a hiring process, but to show you the kind of mindset that we're dealing with. When everything can be excused, justified, or otherwise allowed because of questions related to race or intersectionalities they create, what the heck? How do we adjust to that? How do we deal with that? Well, it's so, I mean, it's so rampant right now. I mean, how many times have we heard DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Everybody, every school board, every university, every major manufacturer, they've all got their DEI office. They've always got their inclusion officer. We even had, last year, I focused on the show, I forgot about it for just a second, U.S. SOCOM, Special Operations Command, hired their first ever diversity and inclusion officer. What the frick? How about this? If you're qualified to be a Green Beret, a Ranger, an Air Force pararescue jumper, or a Navy SEAL, maybe that's what it matters. Diversity, equity, inclusion. How do we do that when there are bona fide occupational qualifications that are so intense? Story here from an organization called Tech Target. Featured article on a DEI firm. See, this is how the industry is trending the hiring processes, because right now, here's just one of many. Diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts have become a priority in many companies, and so have investments in platforms facilitating DEI efforts. One firm called Power to Fly just received $30 million in funding. By the way, this story is dated October of this year. $30 million in funding for its recruiting and retention platform, which connects employers to women and underrepresented groups. What that tells me is this: the hiring processes in this nation have become so hyper-focused on intersectionalities and non-merit-based hiring that companies are standing up, getting huge infusions of capital just to help push people your way that may or may not otherwise qualify, but they certainly meet those check-the-box standards that you need to show that you're a diverse organization. Other recent funding announcements include $25 million in May of this year to Matheson Technologies, which makes an end-to-end DEI hiring and retention platform. $3.5 million that same month to Included Software, which provides an enterprise DEI system based in Redmond, Washington. Okay, merit-based hiring. How do we do that when you have things like what I'm about to read to you and they get away with it? Story on Fox News yesterday. Brace yourselves. Brace yourselves. Boomer, strap on, man. You ready? All right, you ready? Headline. Oh, you bracing?
I'm bracing.
Okay.
I'm bracing. I'm ready.
You're truly bracing. You're
I'm
like
actually
you're holding on to the
to
desk. Canadian University. I think the camera needs to be on you too so they can see your face right now. Canadian University says economics professor position is only open to applicants who self-identify as black.
The only applicants have to self-identify as black.
Self-identify as black.
So if I walked in there, I mean, if you're looking on the camera, I'm a white boy. If I walk in there and say I self-identify as I am black.
Yeah. Yes. Apparently that's a qualifier.
Wow.
Now I got questions. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember this or not. Do you remember Rachel Dolezal? Rachel Dolezal. Okay, she made waves. I'm trying to think when it was. Like in the last few years. Rachel Dolezal was this white chick out in Washington State. I believe she's in Seattle. I think I'm not positive, but she wanted to be black, and so she had literally been posing as a black woman for years. Look her up, Rachel Dolezal, Dolezal. Rachel Dolezal. She had her hair treated, she had her skin treated, and she created this fabricated story about her own background. And she is not black at all. She's a white woman. She had been identifying as black, and she even got a job with the NAACP until someone exposed her. I think it was her own family. I think her sister outed her and said, yeah, my sister ain't black. Oh, there's a picture of her.
Wait.
That's her.
That's her.
That's a before and after.
Y'all got to look this up.
So she lost her job. So a few years ago, you couldn't work for the NAACP and identify as black because that was unacceptable. Now we've got, and by the way, it is a Canadian university, so there's some reason to believe that at least this is north of the border for the moment. Fox News reports as of yesterday, Canadian University is accepting applicants who self-identify as black for a tenure-track teaching position in economics. Toronto Metropolitan University posted the job listing for a tenure-track position in applied microeconomics or economics on November 21st of this year and stated on its website, the school is committed to addressing the underrepresentation of the black faculty. Successful candidates will self-identify as black of African descent and will demonstrate strong potential for excellence and willingness to ability to contribute to teaching and scholarly research and yada yada while maintaining an inclusive, equitable, and collegial work environment across all activities. All applicants to the opportunity must self-identify as black. That's what it says. That's the final thing. The job description also states, quote, all applicants to this opportunity must self-identify as black. Wow. What the frick does that even mean? I mean, so basically Rachel Dolezal should apply for the job.
All they're saying is you just have to walk in there and say, hey, I'm black.
You can't self-identify what you're not.
Right.
I can't self-identify. Okay, so let's pick some things in life.
Well, I'm not a dolphin.
Oh.
I don't have fins.
Okay. I can't even swim fast. All right. So how about I am not a pilot, but please let me fly that plane. I identify as a pilot today. How about this? My Jeep Gladiator identifies as a Prius. Can I use the economy parking?
Excuse me. I did watch a ER movie last night. I am a surgeon now.
Oh, there you go. I stayed at the Holiday Express. Yes. Let me pull that tooth for you. All right. So here What we're saying here, there's no merit-based hiring here going on. You're starting off by labeling things, but we've seen it. We've seen it. It just, how about this? How about the guy who's been making all the headlines right now? Our man, Samuel Brenton. I say our man. He doesn't like to be called a man, but he is. He's a dude. NBC News. NBC. Storyline December 13th, 2 days ago. Headline, history-making non-binary government official is out of a job after theft accusations. Let's be clear about this. He's a nut, all right? He is mentally unstable and was unfit to hold a top-secret security clearance, and the whole world knew it. And they hired him for the position anyway for no other reason except to say they broke the glass ceiling of hiring a non-binary cross-dressing individual with an engineering degree to hold a top-secret security clearance and a major deputy undersecretary position in our government. It's beyond the pale. He is now pending felony charges for multiple thefts. Because he has a fetish for women's clothes, he was stealing women's luggage at airports and trucking them away. And then at some point, he was trying to explain it away, saying, well, okay, in fact, I'll be honest with you, NBC irritates me too because NBC bought right into his pronouns. NBC is NBC is not excusing the theft, but they are also, though, giving him a pass on the things that should have disqualified him from the hiring in the first place, like the fact that he has a long history of very questionable and overtly disturbing behavior. Posting pictures of himself with bondage and giving people wearing bondage and animal masks and giving lectures and seminars on kink and fetish and talking about how children in school should be allowed to keep information from their parents if they're gay or trans. And this guy was applying for a job, and someone looked him over and went, by the way, I had a TS clearance. I can tell you what it takes to get a TS clearance. And I know that the 5-year and sometimes even sooner reavals they have to go through and the requirements you have to pursue to maintain it. And you have to report strange behaviors and foreign contacts, and they look at your finances, and they want your fingerprints and all these things. Did they just bypass it? Are you telling me they didn't bother doing a mere Google search on the guy's name? Well, when you're not doing merit-based hiring, of course they didn't. And so using his pronouns, they and them, NBC says Brenton said they became nervous that people would think they stole the bag, so they left the clothes from the bag inside the drawers of a hotel room and then took the bag to the airport with them. Yeah. More on this when I get back. Let's take a break right now, Boomer, before I run out of time. Top of the hour coming up, by the way. Congressman Barry Moore will be on the line with us. We'll talk to him about things going on in D.C. before we move into the rest of the show. Right now, I'm going to wrap up this section on merit-based hiring. What happens when your boss looks you right in the eye and says, we didn't hire that guy because he was white? We have too many of those already. That's the words. We'll talk about it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. Solid conservative, just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. I am in number one of the Triple Dipper, merit-based hiring. Let's wrap this thing up a little bit because I think you've gotten the point. But nonetheless, let me throw out a couple more. First of all, I will point out Kamala Harris, our vice president. Yeah, there was a whole glass ceiling discussion about her, and boy, the press has given her a pass. Been on the cover of Vogue and all the other great magazines that have given us no indication of her ability to govern. None. And if you remember, too, she was probably one of the most derisive when it came to Joe Biden on the campaign trail. And, oh, by the way, she got like less than 1% of the vote in the primary. She dropped out of the primary because nobody wanted her. Nobody approved of her. She had nothing in her own party that said, hey, she is the one to govern us. And what did the Biden administration do? Well, they solidified the whole check-the-box mentality, and they made sure they created a intersectionality glass ceiling to crow over, and they brought her in as the vice president, even though she had zero popularity on the campaign trail. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Pete Buttigieg, but he had far more popularity on the campaign trail than she did. Or for that matter, Spartacus, Cory Booker, he had, you know, at least some measure of chutzpah on the campaign trail. Now, he drives me crazy. But she had nothing except that she met certain criteria they were looking for. They needed a minority-based female in the administration just to win some hearts and minds, I guess. How about Ketanji Brown Jackson? Now, I said this in my monologue earlier. Ketanji Brown Jackson actually has a really good resume. Now, not if you're a conservative, but what I'm saying is she is not disqualified by virtue of her resume from being on the Supreme Court. And she has, you know, even if she had never ascended to the Supreme Court, she would be able to retire one day with a great career. That being said, if I were Ketanji Brown Jackson, I'd be a little miffed knowing that there's an asterisk next to my name that said, the President of the United States himself, thehill.com. Let me just do this. Thehill.com, written by Jonathan Turley earlier this year, February of this year, wink and a nod nomination who really is Ketanji Brown Jackson. He says that he points out her nomination came basically on the heels of what he called Biden's unnecessary and unprecedented pledge to consider only black females for a vacancy on the court. The very type of threshold criteria the court itself has declared unconstitutional or unlawful for schools or businesses. He said, with a sterling academic and professional resume, she deserved a much better framing and timing for her nomination. Yes, she did. But that's what happens. People will always question who she is on the Supreme Court. That never happened to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That never happened to any of the other females who have gone to the court. Oh, no. You had the guy who's in charge of the nominating process, the President of the United States, who literally said, I will appoint a black woman. That meant that nobody else was qualified if they didn't have that base criteria first. That is not merit-based hiring. Lastly, folks, I'll just point out, there seems to be, an obvious and discriminatory capacity written into this. In an effort to prove that they are woke and they are, on top of things and that DEI is so important to them, we're looking at an administration right now that is literally hiring people just the opposite of what the law says they should. And sooner or later, there's going to wind up being a lawsuit. And rightfully so. When people like Samuel Brinton get jobs with top secret security clearances and other more qualified people were put aside because they didn't check the boxes, someone somewhere is going to bring the lawsuit and put an end to this. All right, folks, that's enough of that. Merit-based hiring coming up next. Congressman Barry Moore. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, the local, the state, the national. We got all of the issues blanketing the entire northern half of our state. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, hey, listen, I'm pleased to bring somebody back on the show who's been with us before. Congressman Barry Moore currently represents part of Alabama's congressional delegation from the 2nd Congressional District of Alabama. He hails from the Wiregrass area down there in the southern part of our state. He and I first met each other. We were both elected at the same time to the Alabama State Legislature, and I was proud to serve with him there. He is currently serving literally, I think his 2nd or 3rd term right now, and is made a name for himself as probably the more conservative member of Alabama's delegation. So without further ado, let me just bring on Congressman Barry Moore. Congressman, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good, Phil. Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you making some time for Rightside Radio today. Listen, let me ask you. You've been kind of on the ball lately. I've seen several press releases with your name on them, but then you also just had a press conference yesterday, and I'm doing a whole section on the southern border as part of today's show. Talk to me about Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and where we're headed on that.
Yeah, so we are hoping to impeach him. We will have the majority come January 3rd, and Jim Jordan is going to be chair of Judiciary as it looks right now. And Jim and I have become friends, and he's asked me to serve on that committee with him. And one of the things we think we need to do is impeach Mayorkas because he's just simply not doing the job. We had a record number of crossings, or I guess if you call them interactions or contacts in October, over 230,000 people in the month of October. That's the most in an October since DHS has been tracking those numbers. And so he's just not doing his job. And so it's time that the president won't fire him. We're going to impeach him.
Well, I've been calling for his impeachment for a while, and I'll be honest with you, it's the most abject failure of all the failures in the Biden administration right now is the southern border. And that being said, it's just like it would have been in the state legislature. You and I were there when we almost had to go through the impeachment process of Governor Bentley. And my recollection was things start in the House and then get referred to the Senate. So do you think you can get it through the House, obviously, but then get it through a Senate that is not as is like split 50-50?
You know, I sure hope so. I think the Senate, if you just step back and take his testimony in front of the committee where he said the border is secure under oath, he obviously was not being honest with us on the committee, and that's an impeachable offense, we think, and we believe that the Senate should follow our lead on this. And if nothing else, if you just look at the numbers, like we said, it's over 5 million people in the last, 24 months. And so it's just, he is failing the American people. He is failing. And when you're the head of the Department of Homeland Security, that's your wheelhouse. And the Homeland is not secure right now.
Well, has he responded to your press conference? Has he said anything at all yet? Because one of the things that I've, we've both seen is when you have an election, sometimes you wind up seeing a change in positions. People retire. It's a high burnout rate in D.C. Is he going to leave of his own accord, or has he said anything about your press conference?
Not that I've been tracking. We did the press conference. Andy Biggs, was a former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. We did a press conference, and Andy's Arizona, so he sees the border crisis. We had a lot of members from Texas, and so, I don't know if he's responded yet or not. He may well ride off into the sunset, but for the nation's national security, and certainly for the homeland, the drugs, the trafficking we're seeing, it's best for our country for him to go away. However he chooses to do that, that's up to him.
Yeah, he resigns of his own accord. We'll still take it, right?
We'll take it.
Well, all right, let me move on to something else. Yesterday, we spent some time on the show. I break the show down every day into what I call the Triple Dipper, 3 major storylines, and one of them yesterday was on the military vaccine mandates and what it's done to our military, how it's the last bastion of the misguided attempt to mandate these vaccines across the board. Nobody else in society is having to do it anymore for the most part, and yet our military is still stuck with it. My recollection was you were supportive even though I know the Freedom Caucus, and you are affiliated with the Freedom Caucus, if I'm not mistaken, but I saw Chip Roy had some pretty stiff comments about the NDAA the other day. But nonetheless, spending aside, it also had that provision about removing the vaccine mandate, which I recall you being supportive of. Am I correct?
That's right, Phil. I have Fort Rucker and Maxwell Gunter, and actually only veteran from the Alabama delegation in Congress. And so that having family members serve and seeing the impact it has on Fort Rucker, military readiness, we're not hitting our recruiting goals, and then you're forcing people out because they won't get a vaccine. That just, to me, the numbers are not adding up for national security purposes, and we're losing a lot of the patriots. I mean, the people who didn't want to get the vaccine didn't trust the process, didn't trust the government, and here they were walking away from careers. So the fact that the mandate is not there going forward is a great thing. Now, I think we're going to try to continue to push to make sure we reinstate people with back pay. That would be what I would like to see happen. But that was a win because remember when I'm a freshman, so I've been here 2 years. One of the toughest no votes I had to take early on was not to vote for the NDAA because there is some good stuff in that occasionally, and
right.
It impacts the defense of the nation, and there's spending in the districts where you got Fort Rucker and Maxwell Gunter. So you hate to be seen as not supporting the military or pay raises for your soldiers. But at the same time, when the vaccine mandate was in there, I just refused to support it. I told him I would not support it. I sent a letter to the president to that effect. I'm not going to vote for it if there's a vaccine mandate in it. So the fact that that's peeled out, that's a step in the right direction. I will call that a win, and certainly it's a win if you're looking to stay in the military. But we would like to see people reinstated as well.
Well, absolutely. In fact, one of your press releases said that I think it was like around December 6th, so like 7-8 days ago, that you, or 9 days ago, that you were one of those who had called upon Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin to provide some clarity about what he's going to do about the military vaccine mandate and to give us insight as to what he's going to do for the National Guard. You and I were both National Guardsmen. Our Alabama National Guard's getting raked over the coals. At one point, I saw we were looking at losing upwards of 11,000 members of our Air and Army National Guard. What are they saying about this, and how are they recognizing this vaccine in comparison to readiness and recruiting and retention?
There seems to be a disconnect with Secretary Austin. I don't quite understand how you don't see that. I mean, if we're not hitting the goals, we're not getting the recruiting numbers we need to be hitting as far as getting people to come on. And part of that is the woke leadership. I mean, just if you look at some of the things that the Joint Chiefs doing and SecDef and all that requiring for soldiers, there's just not a lot of young soldiers right there saying, yeah, I want to sign up for this. But then when you throw the vaccine mandate in there, it just seems it is certainly a deterrent. And so hopefully they will start responding to the letters we send, and we'll see some movement so that they'll wake up and realize. And I think there's no way they don't see it, Phil. I don't know why they don't go ahead and reverse some of the policies. There's no way you don't see a correlation between being woke, vaccine mandates, and having trouble hitting your recruiting numbers. I see it. Most of America sees it. And we nearly lost, if I'm not mistaken, about 10% of the Navy SEALs are looking at getting out because of the vaccine mandate. And those are fair kind of guys,
No, absolutely, and it's amazing to watch, and the idea they can say it doesn't affect readiness is a complete disregard for truth. But all right, well, let me ask you this before we run out of time. We got about 3 minutes left. Right now, one of the things we're seeing is a continuing resolution, which for our listeners' benefit is when they can't get a budget passed, they pass a continuing resolution to allow spending to continue like it has been for a period of time. That being said, we're looking at a massive $1.7 trillion omnibus funding bill that some folks are pretty frustrated with the idea that McConnell and even our own Richard Shelby have been sort of joining with the Democrats to force in this lame duck spending omnibus bill. You had some thoughts on that. If I'm not mistaken, you're opposed to that during the lame duck session. Is that right?
Yeah, Phil, what a disastrous deal the Senate is cutting right now with the Democrats. And these are Republican senators cutting the deal. The problem with it is we're out doing our town halls, and I'm telling folks, hey, we as the House, when we get the majority, will have the purse strings. We can make a difference. We can slow inflation. We can make it where you can afford gas. We can do some things to cut back on runaway government printing of money. And so I'm out on the town hall talking about, well, it's going to change when we get the majority in January once the Republicans take over the purse strings. And then you got the Senate cutting a deal with Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. As we just fired Nancy a few months in November, we fired her. She's no longer going to be Speaker. And McConnell and them are talking about cutting a deal that's going to fund the government through the end of 2023. Well, that puts us into the next election cycle. And so we don't have time to right the ship as Republicans because they're tying our hands in the Senate with Pelosi on our way out. If they pass this thing, this omnibus, $1.7 trillion, then the effect that we could have on policy and the economy itself to impact the next election cycle could be null and void, courtesy of the Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. Senate.
Wow. Well, I know the Freedom Caucus is opposed to this in general. I've also seen some other members, and I'll be honest with you, the sentiment that I'm seeing just on social media is stop the madness. I mean, this is giving them a lame duck win like this is absolutely not what we need to be doing, knowing full well we're walking into a majority. Go ahead.
It's a short-term win, Phil, for the Dems and a long-term loss for the American people if we do this.
I totally agree. Well, Congressman, listen, let me ask you one last question, if you don't mind. I know that you are friends with the folks like Jim Jordan, who has been supportive of Kevin McCarthy, but I also know that Andy Biggs is also someone who you're working with a lot, and he's running against McCarthy. How do you see it working out? Who's going to be the next Speaker of the House, as far as you can tell?
Well, I got friends on both sides, and that happens a lot when you're just talking about leadership elections. But right now, we're at a point that we're negotiating with McCarthy, and I think that's the thing. Just trying to get some rule changes so the 780,000 people I have, I represent, have a say in amendments. We have a say in policy rather than leaving some of the old rules in place that Nancy had. I think Kevin's moving in our direction. So this is a time for negotiations. We'll see what happens come January the 3rd. Hopefully he'll come to the table with more concessions on the rules to give us more individual power for amendments in the process. And then hopefully Kevin McCarthy can come to some agreement so we can make sure we have a Republican speaker and do the things we need to do for the American people.
All right. Well, I like the sound of it because I agree. I was talking to Andy Roth from the State Freedom Caucus Network the other day on the show, and he made that very point. He said it's not always about who's in charge; it's about the rules that they promote. And if we can change the rules, we can get a lot more done. All right. Well, Congressman, we appreciate you. Thanks for your position on your stances on these, and we look forward to having you back on the show again in the future. Okay.
Hey, thank you, Phil. Appreciate the time. Y'all keep sending your prayers for wisdom and courage.
All right. Thanks, man. Take care. Well, that's a good one, folks. You hear me talk about the House Freedom Caucus, and that's a member right there from Alabama, the House Freedom Caucus, Congressman Barry Moore. Keep your eyes on him. I look forward to seeing what he can do in the years to come. And also know this, because he dares to be in the Freedom Caucus and take some hard positions and even vote against the NDAA in the past because it had a vaccine mandate in it, it also puts a target on his back. Just be aware. And be alert and be prayerful. All right, Boomer, take us to a break, brother. We'll do that right now. We'll come right back. I'm moving to number 2 of the Triple Dipper. We're going to talk about that thing that we see at the grocery store, the gas pump, and everywhere else right now, Bidenflation. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Oh, man. I tell you what, Bidenflation. All right, Boomer. So what have you noticed that costs more right now? I mean, here we are in the Christmas season. You guys are shopping. You're buying groceries. You got little kids to feed, yada, yada.
Oh, grocery eggs.
Eggs are the thing,
I mean, eggs are the thing because you got to put eggs in all the sweets, right?
So, well, that and Charlene, by the way, real men do eat quiche. Charlene makes a mean quiche.
Ooh.
So the other night we have some friends that are going through some stuff, and she made several quiches for them to help feed the family and all that kind of stuff. And it was like she had to buy. They come in the cartons. Now you can get them like a dozen and a half eggs.
Oh, right.
$9 something.
Oh,
$9 something.
That's.
I mean, what does that boil down to? So that's what, 18 eggs, $9 something. Wow. Wow. Look at that. Can you?
I think the chickens went on strike.
That's what I'm wondering. I think I even cracked that joke. Oh, that's a pun too. Cracked that joke. I cracked that yoke to her. Did the chickens go on strike?
I mean, come on. Wow.
It's just unreal.
But I mean, everything that I've seen, and
although
I just told my wife not to tell me what the bill is anymore for the groceries.
Yeah, please.
I just don't want to know.
Yeah, just
don't tell me, please.
No more pain, please. Although, we also just got through with our daughter's wedding, and I'm told that things and I don't regret a bit of it. Not a second. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
But I am told that wedding was far more expensive this year because of the Bidenflation that we're seeing.
Wow.
When you have the big event, with the flowers are more expensive. Flowers. Do flowers grow different than they used to?
You actually have to plant them with a dollar bill now.
you fertilize them with loose change. I don't know, man. But then you look at it and think, well, what in God's name? How did eggs get more expensive? Did the chickens hold out for bigger pay? Is that what happened? They went on strike?
I'm sure. I guess they want their individual spaces now instead of being clumped up with each other.
And you know what? I've got a friend who's a poultry farmer. I need to call him and find out.
Yes.
And say, look, what are you doing to me, man?
What's going on?
I can't even make quiches for friends without pain. But yeah,
yes.
That's where we are right now. So Bidenflation has been a thing. We got to a record 40-year high of 9.1%. We'd never seen that before. Now I will say this: I'll call things when I see them, balls and strikes here, and we are seeing prices lowering at the pump. I am so thankful.
Yes.
I've had to spend some time on the road here lately, heading to different cities around the state, and filling up the tank is a little less painful than it used to be. A little less painful. It's like, the water is not at a rolling boil. It's just at a moderate boil. You know what I'm saying? It's not as hot as it was. But yeah, I think right now I'm seeing gas. I don't know what you've seen, Booms, but something like $2.75 a gallon, thereabouts.
Yeah, 270 right in that area. I saw 271 the other day.
Okay.
So when I see that, I'm like, let me get in that gas station.
It's like the hot light at Krispy Kreme, man.
Absolutely.
270.
That the truck guzzles.
It's just. Oh yeah, you get the.
Oh, it just.
Well, you are more of a man for driving that big truck.
Thank you.
Okay, just so we all know that. Oh God. Oh, by the way, speaking of manly, this is a total aside. The cost of bacon.
Oh.
But earlier I discovered maple bacon donuts. Somebody brought some to our office, and I opened the box, and sitting right there in the front was maple bacon donut.
Maple bacon donut. Did it have bacon on top of it?
They might as well just call that the testosterone donut. That is my testosterone levels have surged since I ate the maple bacon donut.
Maple bacon donuts.
Although I am certain it was more expensive because it had bacon on it.
I'm sure it was.
Which is at 17% over what it was last year.
Oh my goodness.
Why?
Bacon.
First of all, I don't think the pigs asked for it because pretty much they had to sacrifice all to give us the bacon. But you know what I'm saying? What in God's name changed? Anyway. We'll break it down, folks, here in a minute. Going to number 2 in the Triple Dipper, Bidenflation. And, of course, now every real man out there wants to drive a truck like Boomer and eat maple bacon donuts like me. That's where we are. All right, Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right, with a show that covers the entire northern half of the state. I'm talking about way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. On the text line, I see here that David from Lincoln says regarding eggs, it's because of the avian flu, which has been killing thousands of chickens. I did not know that. I need to check that out. He also says higher cost for fertilizer and other supplies. So there's something. And then John from Huntsville wants to know if I ever tried a jelly and mayonnaise sandwich. No, I have not, sir, and I don't think I will. Just so you know. And then Brian from Huntsville says, you had to mention quiche. I made a recipe for andouille sausage crawfish quiche. Now putting you two on earphone and heading to the grocery. I got somebody holding on the line. I'm sitting here just talking about the text line. Let me grab the phone line. Held on during the break. Richard from Madison. Richard, how you doing today?
I am great. You and Boomer struck a nerve with me. I've been out of town, actually, down in Georgia, visiting my daughter's son-in-law and my new granddaughter, who was just born a couple days ago. So
congratulations.
We're back in town. Thank you. That's number 4, and I would love like 10 more, but I'll take whatever I can get.
There you go.
But you struck a nerve with me. I got to say, I'm so glad to be back, glad to be listening to you again, because when you started talking about maple bacon donuts, it came back to, because when I first heard that and first thought about that, I was like, man, people in the South will put bacon on mud and think it tastes good because it's bacon. But so my wife and I were visiting Louisville, Kentucky, and we found we were told about a bakery, and we went there, and the line was ungodly out the door. But we waited the line because these people told us to go and check it out. And right there in the front, when we finally got up there, was a maple bacon donut.
Yeah.
And I made a comment about it, and the lady says, well, I'll let you try it for free since you'd never been here before. And I'm telling you, and I told Boomer this, I said, I bit into that thing, and I was in maple bacon testosterone heaven. It was the greatest thing I ever ate in my life. Oh, my gosh. And if anybody in your listening audience ever goes to Louisville, Kentucky, or has been to Louisville, Kentucky, and you missed out on waiting in that long line at Nord's,
oh, yeah,
you're missing. I'm telling you, it is the place.
Well, my lovely wife, Charlene, is from Louisville, Kentucky, so next time we're back up there, I'm going to Nord's and getting me an absolute testosterone-fueled official food of Rightside Radio maple bacon donut.
Absolutely, brother. You do it to it, man. And make sure you post it online.
All right. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate you. Congratulations on the grandbaby. Oh, that's awesome. Maple bacon donuts. I'm going to tell you right now, man, maple bacon donut. 3 good things all in one. I think I may have just declared that, at least for now, it is the official food of Rightside Radio. Is that possible? Can we do that?
Bacon donuts.
Maple bacon donuts. I mean, it just kind of leaves your taste buds feeling good. You know, is that possible?
It probably is. I mean, maybe we should have a maple bacon donut break.
It's like
during the show.
It's like your taste buds got a massage. It just leaves you feeling like something just went right. just making you feel all
whoever made that
copacetic. Like I can look at Bidenflation and eat a maple bacon donut and feel like everything's all right. That's just the way I feel. All right. Let's talk about Bidenflation, though. So, yeah, that's the number 2 on the Triple Dipper here. Bidenflation. Where are we at? What is going on? Well, I will tell you this. I'm going to call it like I see it. Some things are starting to go a little better, a little righter, if you will. Sort of. The water is not at a raging boil. It's just at a slow boil right now. On inflation, inflation did not stay as high. That's the way to look at it. But that's good. I mean, like I said, call it like you see it. I'd love for inflation to be like back to where it has been at 2% or less, which it was under the Trump economy. But here in the Biden economy, with all the major spending, where they're throwing money into the economy, and we're still recovering from the pandemic shutdowns, which we actually are. We're still recovering from that in some ways. Then we'll take less inflation right now. Epoch Times has an article that came out yesterday. Biden touts his lower than expected inflation numbers, says it proves his policies are working. Okay. I don't know that he can claim credit because nothing he has done that I can see is happening. It's the Fed raising rates, and it's the easing of the market, and it's the restoration of the supply chain, none of which, to me, have a great deal of Biden's handwriting on them. President Joe Biden says the U.S. inflation rates are falling and that prices would return to normal at the end of next year. End of next year. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Inflation has been skyrocketing since mid-2021, which experts attribute to trillions of dollars in government stimulus spending, a supply chain crisis, and an imbalance in demand caused by COVID-19 lockdowns and Moscow's invasion of Ukraine and higher energy prices. It was the perfect storm. But, okay, higher energy prices, Biden's fault. Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, arguably, some believe, may not have happened had Trump been president. COVID-19 lockdowns, Biden's fault and liberal governors' faults, and too often some soft Republicans' faults. All right? Supply chain crisis, Biden's fault. Government stimulus spending, very often Congress and Biden's fault. So I look at this and go, wow. He's claiming that his policies are bringing it back down. Which ones? Anyway, U.S. consumer prices rose less than expected in November for the second time in a row, with the smallest annual increase in inflation in nearly a year. Yay, I like that. The latest news on inflation provides some reason for optimism for the holiday season. I would argue for the year ahead, said Biden. Consumer prices rose 7.1% in November. All right. That's down from 7.7% in October, down from 9% prior to that. It appears to have, by the way, caught the Federal Reserve's attention, because they did raise the rates again, but they only went up half a percentage point as opposed to a full 3/4 or 1 point like they've done in the past. So the rates are going up. I mean, keep an eye on your credit card. If you're trying to buy a house right now or refinance a house, it's not going to be where it was. This is not. Well, the Heritage Foundation came out with a piece dated November 10th of this year. Very interesting. Heritage experts, October inflation numbers show working families have effectively lost $7,400 thanks to Biden inflation. So there's a direct impact. The cost of main staples, fuel, and energy has basically ransacked people's pockets. By the way, I could not help but notice that Paul from Athens has texted in and says, I put bacon on my bacon. Well, then, Paul, you're paying 19% more for that double bacon than you did last year. That's it. Heritage releases their report saying, this came out in November, by the way, so we're just about a month after it came out. Prices rose 7.7% over the last year. Core prices, which exclude food and energy, climbed 0.3% in the same month. Since October of last year, here you go, you ready? The prices of many consumer staples have risen sharply, including lunch meats by 19%. There's your bacon. Although I personally think bacon deserves its own food group. So anyway, they're lumping it into lunch meats. Lunch meats up 19%. Eggs, brother, here's your eggs. You ready?
Yep.
Brace yourself. Up 43%.
Whoa.
43%. Flour is up 24%. Milk is up 15%. Other necessities have seen large increases over the last year, like health insurance has gone up 20%. Natural gas is up 20%. Gasoline went up 17%. A research fellow in regional economics with Heritage Foundation said the continued inflation plaguing Americans is the direct result of the Federal Reserve printing money to finance runaway spending by Joe Biden and a Congress that has willingly enabled him. Prices have risen so much faster than wages under Biden that the average family has lost $6,100 in real annual income. Higher interest rates have increased borrowing, costing the typical family another $1,300. This has effectively cost families $7,400 in income under Biden. Wow. Wow. The mortgage payment. All right, Boomer, you and your wife both have a background in real estate. All right, the mortgage payment on a median priced home has increased 91%. Wow.
There's somewhere that I read that a lot of people that bought in the 2021, when it was super high, that they've already lost money on their houses. There's somewhere where I was reading that.
I don't want to hear that. We built ours in 2020. I don't want to hear that.
I know. I mean, we just bought, so I'm like, oh no, this is It's just crazy.
Yeah, but you're not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere.
All right.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
But the average of 91% increase in median-priced homes means upwards of $910 a month. That's $10,900 more a year for the average family paying on a 30-year mortgage over what they would have a couple of years ago. So, yeah, wowzers.
Wow.
Wowzers. Meanwhile, despite what I just read to you, Breitbart reports that in a fact check, Biden falsely claims that wages are rising faster than inflation. He is. He is claiming that. Now, I'll go back to my first point. Those of you out there who listen to the show that are of the more liberal persuasion, the center left, you heard me say it. I acknowledge inflation is not running as rampantly high as it was last month. It's 2 months of moderate decline. All right? And my analogy was the water is boiling a little less hard. All right? It's not a rolling boil. It's just a moderate boil. In fact, I'm looking at right now on a text, John from Brownsboro just texted in literally like seconds ago. It caught my eye. It says a pack of cigarettes that cost less than $5 2 years ago is now around $7.50. If that wasn't impetus to quit smoking, I don't know what is. So Breitbart reports as of yesterday, the claim wages have been rising faster than consumer prices for several months, President Biden said. All this means, here's his quote, Biden said this at the White House, all this means that for the last several months, wages have gone up more than prices have gone up. Wages have gone up more than prices have gone up. He said it twice. I guess his teleprompter got stuck and he read it twice. Verdict, false. The average hourly wages and average weekly wages in November rose in November by more than the rate of inflation, but this was the first time they've done so since August. In September and October, they rose at almost the same pace. What they're saying is it's actually, when you compare, they are down from where they were a year ago, still looking at a deficit by comparison. So, is he claiming this month? Yeah. How does that look in the big picture? Not as good. Not as good when you put it in context. All right, listen. We're going to cover this some more when we get back from the break. Let's take the break right now, Booms. And I'm looking at JT from Lacey Springs. Says his inflatables, Pringles, have gone up 65%. Propane 30%, sugar 100%, milk 30%. That Pringles thing disturbs me. Eggs, bacon. Wow. All the things it takes to make a maple bacon donut. The official food of Rightside Radio. All right, y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative, just plain right, making it cool to be a conservative. All right. Hey, listen, John from Huntsville texting in saying, I want some of that right side bacon. All right. So, story here on CNN. Phil, you went to CNN? Yes, I did. I went to CNN. Headline, they say this is good economic news. It might not feel like it. There you go. December 14th, so it's just yesterday. It's accurate to say inflation is not, as heavy as it was. The article starts off. It basically says that the cost of things has slowed somewhat. Prices rose 7.1% annually in November, down from 7.7%. This means inflation has been slowing, though, for 5 straight months, which is down from the peak of 9.1% in June. That's wonderful. However, the Federal Reserve was not convinced enough, it points out. Not convinced enough not to raise the rates again. And here's the interesting piece. There is talk by the Fed. Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, made clear Wednesday that more interest rates are on the way in 2023. We still have a ways to go, he said. He predicted there would be no rate cuts in 2023, meaning the rates that we're seeing right now are going to be with us for a while longer, and they might even go higher. All right. After raising rates to the highest level in 15 years, the Fed said Wednesday it forecasts U.S. gross domestic product to grow just 0.5 percentage point in 2023. It may not be a recession, they're saying. It's arguable. Depends on who you are, I guess. But nonetheless, they say it won't be fun. The semantics of whether or not America's in a technical recession may not matter, especially to those who lose their jobs or companies or whose profits are squeezed. And I get it. I mean, as a business owner myself, I can just tell you, it's a tougher time than usual right now. Businesses are struggling. In fact, here's an article from the Daily Caller. Daily Caller, dated yesterday. Businesses still struggling under Biden's economy as pandemic loans are coming due. So here's the other piece. We're about to see some of the influx in cash and the relief provided for the pandemic, which got a little bit carried away, you think? Well, some of that's starting to come due now. And so millions of businesses, it says, are worried about their finances after pandemic loan repayments began in October. So a lot of people took the opportunity for deferments, all right? They literally were allowed the opportunity to defer on payments for a period of time, or they took out SBA loans thinking that that was a deferred payment loan, not realizing the interest was accruing from the moment they signed on. So they took the loans out in order to accommodate their loss of income in order to keep things afloat. I get it. That's what lines of credit and things like that are for. I know it. However, they've now gotten caught in the trap, the cycle where they deferred their payments or they didn't realize the interest was accruing, and guess what? The piper has to get paid at some point. 4 million businesses that received a total of $390 billion in COVID-19 disaster loans have started paying them back. However, inflation, supply chain issues, and a tight labor market have left some of them more financially vulnerable than previously expected, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Small Business Administration, the SBA, first allowed borrowers to defer their payments by 12 months, then opted to extend the period twice to 30 months, ultimately deciding against allowing the maximum deferral of 4 years. Tony Wright, one business owner, talked about how he borrowed $150,000 from the SBA. He said it helped to survive the layoffs. He said, but the payback is coming at a time when it's just tough right now. And I'm putting words in his mouth, but he said it's tough right now. He says we're seeing a steeper decline of business than we were during the pandemic. And so how about that? So during the pandemic, COVID relief dollars were flooding the economy. People were still buying stuff. In fact, look at the revenues that Alabama got, not just on the COVID relief that came from the federal government in big tranches, but I'm talking about actual sales tax revenue. Because people were, spending the excess cash they had. Some were being paid to sit at home. And all that to say, the economy wound up being not as hard on some who were allowed to continue operating. Now, you had those who were shut down, couldn't have a restaurant open or something like that, and we had a lot of people that lost their business altogether. But those that were able to stay open for one reason or another actually had a better year. Rates were low, real estate was still going, building was still ongoing, people were financing their houses, refinancing their houses. It's all tougher in 9% to 7% inflation. And those loans were awarded at rates of 3.75% from the SBA. Well, guess what? they've become due now. And people are looking around going, holy cow, now I got to figure out how to pay the bill while the economy is still bleeding me dry. It's a tough job, man. It's a tough thing, and I get it. I guess the last one that I'll cover on this story. Well, no, you know what? I've got a story here that I'm going to have to get into probably after the break. We'll wrap it up on this. It's called 13 Things That Are About to Get More Expensive. Yeah, it's interesting. But I will say this. U.S. cost of living does continue to rise. Story here from The Guardian, December 13th. U.S. cost of living is going up, although inflation appears to be slowing. So there's the mixed news, right? So when we get back from this break, I'm going to jump into this article here and wrap up this segment on Reader's Digest of all. I think it's the first time I ever used Reader's Digest in my my resources. Am I right?
I think so. I mean, I haven't seen it come through.
I used to love Reader's Digest. I used to wait for it to come in the mail every week, every month. I'm sorry. But anyway, Reader's Digest has a piece, 13 things that are about to get more expensive. We come back, I'll wrap up this section of the Triple Dipper and tell you what they are. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, the local, the state, the national. We cover down on all the issues. Hour number 3 of being solid, conservative, and just plain right today. All right. Hey, listen, we're still in Bidenflation. What you got, Booms?
Yeah, I got a couple text messages, but one I wanted to read, one from Brian from Huntsville. He says, I know exactly what people are spending on during the lockdowns. Do you know?
I can guess what.
Black market toilet paper.
You know what? I bet, too. I would bet that there were any number of people who literally heisted toilet paper from their offices to take home. What do you bet?
Oh, absolutely.
Those little commercial rolls that are wrapped in that kind of cellophane-y paper with, and then they're showing up at the house.
Yes. Well, we were a part of a gym up in Nashville that was kind of still open a little bit at the time, or reopened, a little earlier than some.
Kind of still open?
Well, they were open until they actually shut everything down.
Gotcha.
And then my wife was telling me all the stalls in that that gym were completely out of toilet paper because people were taking them home.
Oh, my gosh. Could you not spare a square?
Yeah.
That was that great scene from Seinfeld. Just a square? Could you spare a square? Okay. All right. I said before we get to the break that, we're talking about Bidenflation. I've got an article I'm about to get into here. I will say this. TheGuardian.com is saying that the Fed is hiking interest rates right now at a faster pace that we've seen since the 1980s, trying to slow the economy down. The latest dip in the rate of inflation was also helped by falling gas prices. So yes, I agree. Some things are happening. It's frustrating to watch interest rates go up. As an attorney, a part of our practice at the firm, all of us attorneys, we do real estate closings, and we actually, do a lot of real estate work, and it's been amazing to watch that have to slow down. So yeah, these rate hikes, they impact my business as an attorney, my clients' business as consumers, and they're trying to slow the rate of inflation. Some say let's not be so belligerently moving forward on raising rates that we push us into a recession, because that's a fear too. The Fed can go too far if it's not careful. All right. But I got an article here that I'm going to cap this off with. Bidenflation. ReadersDigest.com. By the way, I used to love Reader's Digest. I mean, you could start at the beginning and just go through the entire thing, and it was just, and I always went straight to the jokes and stuff like that too as a kid. Many a day spent with the Reader's Digest. All right, ReadersDigest.com. 13 things that are about to get more expensive. You ready for this? I'm going to run through some of these with you. First of all, they point out, if it feels like the pandemic is still pinching your wallet, you're not imagining things. In August, the Consumer Price Index, which measures the cost of a, quote, basket of goods for the average urban consumer, showed prices rising an average of 5.3% compared to a year ago. Number one on the list, computers and electronics. We know that for a fact. We had to outfit the studio this year, and then had to order some pieces. But yeah, computers and electronics is one of the biggest things that has been hit by the various factors of Bidenflation, whether it be the supply chain, whether it be the pandemic shutdowns, whether it be the cost of goods overall. It says the world currently has a very limited supply of microchips. When COVID-19 first appeared, the factories that manufacture microchips shut down while orders still piled up. Those factories are now still struggling to meet demand. They also point out it doesn't help that a Japanese microchip plant was damaged by fire, and a factory in Texas had to temporarily close during last February's brutal storms. In Taiwan, where 63% of the world's chips are made, severe drought threatened chip making because it requires a large amount of water. Some large TVs are now costing about 30% more than they did a year ago because of microchips. There's that. All right, so computers and electronics, number one on the list of 13. Number two, automobiles. Automobiles also depend on microchips, they point out. automobiles are 7.6% more than they were this time last year. The price of previously owned vehicles, you would think, okay, I'm just going to buy a used car. That's even worse. And I'm not sure why, but it says the price of previously owned vehicles has surged by 31.9%. 31.9. So here's the deal. If you've got 2 or 3 other vehicles at the house, you don't really need them. You could make some bank right now by selling some used vehicles. But if you're looking to have your daily driver, like you need a car right now, 31.9% higher than last year. The good news is gas prices or car prices are starting to rise by smaller amounts. It's going up less. Okay. Inventories might start being replenished later this year. But then you look at rental cars. Boomer, have you had to rent a car lately?
No, I have not.
Bidenflation. Rental cars, 73% higher than this past July, than it was a year ago.
Whoa.
73%. Here's the reason why.
Yeah, I would like to know.
At the start of the pandemic, when no one was going out, rental car companies were selling off their fleet inventory to try and create revenue. All right? And they points out here, in normal times, that's where rental cars go when they retire. All right? So then they sold off their fleet to make revenue without having to borrow money, and then came back into the more revitalized economy. Now they can't get cars because cars are harder to get. And, oh, by the way, when they do get the cars, it costs more.
Oh, man.
So the average cost to rent a car is 73% higher right now than it was this time last year.
Ooh.
Holy smokes.
Steep.
Of course, gas we know about, 42% higher than it was this time last year. Clothing. I did not see this coming. Clothing. It points out that there are still trade policies that were Trump's that are now also Biden still in place that deal with rising cotton prices. I would also point out that fertilizer and the regulatory burdens put on farmers during the Biden administration have also increased farming costs, cotton. And then it points out that for a while there was not any demand for what you would call going out clothes, or work clothes, like business casual, business professional. And all of a sudden, there's a pent-up demand for that as people are going back to work or going out to dinner. So,
well, it was that because, I know somebody that has a screen printing and embroidery shop that, has a lot of shirts. And
I know
all
that guy.
Yeah, he's a guy. But, man, I will say the price of the goods to manufacture some of those things shot up dramatically.
No kidding.
Yeah, and a lot of people were asking, why are your prices going up? Or we're like, it's not necessarily ours. It is the actual goods, the actual shirts, the actual, things that we were
even
purchasing.
Even the thread for embroidery would probably went
absolutely.
up.
All of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Toys are going up right before Christmas. The global shipping crisis, they say, is to blame on that one. By the way, what I'm also hearing, too, is I don't know where they went. There's a shortage, apparently, of shipping containers. Where the heck did they go? Did we just lose some? Did somebody lose a rack of shipping containers and we're not aware of it? But it's created bidding wars for shipping. So, yeah, that's a problem. Here's one I didn't expect to see. This one caught me off guard. Christmas trees.
Christmas trees.
I'm not sure if I can explain this. But according to the American Christmas Tree Association, because there's apparently an American Christmas Tree Association. Is there an American Maple Bacon Donut Association?
There may be.
We need to start one.
Yes.
Nice. All right, so the American Christmas Tree Association says trees will be in short supply this year. Climate events like fires and drought in the Pacific Northwest have affected their tree crops. Shipping crunches have also caused it to go up, upwards of 25% more for a live Christmas tree this year. 25%. There's a Grinch. All right. Housing, we've talked about it, 18.1% higher. Groceries, we all know it, we see it. But here's a few things to think about. The average price right now for bacon, they've got bacon in here, is now over $7 a pound. $7 a pound. More than a 25% increase over what it was this time a year ago. All right, I think it's more than that. Steak and eggs, also the same. They're touching all my high points here. They're hitting me where I live right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Foods away from home, though. That's food at home. How about foods away from home? I've heard it said it's cheaper to go out to eat sometimes than it is to go to the grocery store and buy the ingredients and make it yourself. They're saying not so. It is now 4.7% higher than it was last year to go out to eat. 4.7 still beats paying 25% more for bacon at home. I don't know. Anyway, there's that. Medical supplies also going up. What else? Wrap this thing up. Video games. There's your computer chips again. Books. What the heck? Books. And oh, by the way, planning for your future is getting harder. I'm not sure how to acknowledge some of those.
So basically everything.
Yeah. All God's children paying more stuff. You got more bank for less stuff. If you want to buy a new TV or a Christmas tree, it's going to be more expensive. Just plan on it. Bidenflation sucks. All right, let's do this. Let's take a break right now. We'll come right back. It's time to change gears. We're going to number 3 on the Triple Dipper. I'm getting all 3 of them in today, Boomer. All 3 of them. It must be that maple bacon donut that I had earlier, buddy.
Yeah,
I'm jazzed.
Jazzed you up.
Yes. I'm ready to roll. All right. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right, saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, man, it's time to move on to the third part of the Triple Dipper. Before I do that, though, let me just pause real quick and tell you guys. So ZLA Solutions, as we're talking about Bidenflation and jobs and that kind of thing, there are people out there still looking for jobs, and there are people with jobs to be had. So let me just tell you about my friends at ZLA Solutions, because I have known them for a long time. I talk to them quite often. And oh, by the way, they've been with the show since the very beginning as one of our original sponsors. But ZLA Solutions is doing an epically good job at getting jobs and people lined up. If you're looking for a job, go to their website, zlausa.com. Check them out. They got jobs posted all over North Alabama right now, good paying jobs, big name employers. But if you're an employer looking to fill out the ranks of your workforce, yeah, I mean, they can square you away. They can do all the recruiting, the background checks, the drug testing. It doesn't matter whether it's a onesies and twosies with special niche skills or a whole shift of people. Doesn't matter. They'll do the recruiting, the background checks, the drug testing, all of it. Blue collar, white collar, no collar, it don't matter. ZLAUSA.com is their website. And I encourage you to check them out. ZLAUSA.com, ZLA Solutions. And tell them you heard about it on Right Side Radio. All right, moving into number 3 of the Triple Dipper, suddenly we have a border. That's what I'm calling it. Suddenly we have a border. And Boomer, I'm going to need that audio clip number 1 here in just a minute. Okay. But suddenly we have a border. Like what? So people are showing up to report on it besides Bill Maloogian at Fox? I mean, the reporting has been awful. Like the vast majority of the press corps has been AWOL. And it's just... It's like they've been ignoring it. They didn't want to call attention to it. Well, now we're past the midterms, and the reporting begins. Pray tell, why would that be? Perhaps it's because they recognize, A, they've got to, B, they've got to because there's about to be a House majority that's going to be holding hearings on this and calling a lot of attention to it as they try to, like my friend Congressman Barry Moore said a moment ago, try to impeach Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. It is way past time for the kind of reporting that suddenly launched in like the last 10 days. In fact, I got an audio clip. Remember, you got clip number 1? You good to go on that? I got an audio clip here. So Sean Hannity did a thing on this last night. He played a montage of the number of different reporting sources that are suddenly talking about the border who have never been talking about the border until like all of a sudden they got their go-ahead from somebody and they launched all at the same time. Play clip 1.
2 long years. Now, this situation is so dire that even the mainstream media mob, they are starting to take note. Take a look.
We turn now to the growing humanitarian crisis on the southern border. A new wave of migrants is flooding across the Texas border.
Border officials in El Paso, Texas, are asking for more federal money after more than 2,400 migrants crossed the southern border there over the weekend.
The Border Patrol in El Paso now reporting an average of more than 2,400 illegal border crossings every day. The surge of migrants, mainly from Central and South America, overwhelming border officials.
Migrant facilities at capacity here, forcing Border Patrol to transfer migrants to other parts of the border. A senior Homeland Security official calling the situation, quote, an absolute mess.
I've been reporting in this exact spot in Ciudad Juarez for years now on migration. I have never seen anything quite like this.
You know, the question I have, where have these people been for the last 2 years? Certainly not at the border. And notice how they're all treating this like some kind of natural new phenomenon without a known cause or cure.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that sums it up right there. The hypocrisy of the mainstream media is unbelievable. And the other, for that matter, the other digital medias and the other cable news networks. So what you just heard there was a montage of like MSNBC, NBC, CBS, CNN, all out there saying, oh, look, we got a problem at the southern border. Well, friggin', you know there was. You've just not been doing your jobs. And so, yeah, suddenly it's like we have a southern border again. And it's in trouble. Y'all, it's right now I've got one report that I'll go into here in just a minute. That says that we're looking at probably what will be the worst ever year for illegal immigration in U.S. history coming up in 2023. I mean, we're looking at things right now that are on like some kind of a mass migration apocalyptic level. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not trying to be sensationalistic. I mean, it's at that level. We're literally seeing right now the population of the United States of America grew by at least a percentage point just in the first 2 years of the Biden administration because of illegal immigration alone. Can you imagine? We added a percentage to our population base because of illegal immigration. Now, we've always had some measure of illegal immigration. We know we have. I mean, it's as long as I've been around, we have. People would cross the Rio Grande. I mean, you know, there were derisive terms they used to call people who crossed over the river. And now we're just seeing like whole towns walking across the river. It's unbelievable. And not only that, but people are dying. That's the other thing. It's not just a question of they're coming here for a better life. They're dying en route because they're being lured here. It's like saying that, well, that fish didn't know what was happening. Well, you put the lure in the water. And if you bait the hook and the fish come to the hook, do you blame the fish or do you blame the one who baited the hook? Well, right now, the Biden administration has baited the hook. They have literally set the stage right now for a mass migration event that is going to exceed what we've been seeing so far if they don't start taking some affirmative action, and they're not. They have no plan, none. In fact, I'm going to go through this here in a minute and talk about the fact that they're now talking about we're working urgently to form a plan. You've had 2 years. Not only that, you know, technically, whether we liked it or not, the Biden administration knew it was taking office come November of 2020. That's when they began putting their team together. That's when Secretary Mayorkas was probably tapped to be coming in as a cabinet secretary. Did he do anything? Did he look at it? Oh, no, that's right. He's the guy who used to work in the Obama administration, Secretary Mayorkas, who planned for the DACA amnesty, right? The Dreamers. He's the guy who has espoused his love for sanctuary cities. And he's in charge of our southern border right now. And it's about to get worse. And I'll tell you why. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. I'm talking about from way down south of Birmingham to up north past Huntsville. We've got Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Well, hey, listen, before I go any further, I got to tell you folks, the lawyers at Riley and Jackson, they have been working diligently on these Camp Lejeune water contamination cases. They got like 5 lawyers working that. And they wanted me to make sure y'all knew they're still ongoing, and they can give you a free consultation over the phone to decide whether or not you may have been exposed in such a way that would, warrant you applying for a claim. But they've also got another thing they're doing right now. They're working on this case where basically if you were a firefighter or in the military using firefighting foam, that you may have been exposed to a carcinogenic version of firefighting foam that is pretty bad, and they can work with you on that. So both those cases, Camp Lejeune and the firefighting foam, if you believe you may have been exposed or you or someone you love may have been exposed, then you ought to give them a call. Riley and Jackson Law Firm. I mean, these are good lawyers. They practice out of Birmingham, but they cover the entire state in what they do. And they've got some amazing work under their belt. And by the way, I will say this, they're not just good on the law, they're also good on politics too, if you know what I mean. So Riley and Jackson, here's their number, 205-879-5000. I'll read it again in a minute. Just know this, they won't charge you for the phone call. The phone number again, Riley and Jackson, 205-879-5000. Friends of mine, tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. And no representation made. The quality of legal service before is great. The quality of legal service performed by other lawyers. There you go. I got 2 callers that held on the line. Let me go to them real quick. Line, which one is that? Line 1. Is that Jeff? Yeah, Jeff from Indiana. How you doing, buddy?
Well, I've been better.
Oh, man.
Today, Washington, D.C. is not the only swamp. I just had a water line break in my yard and went 57,000 gallons out.
Oh, brother. I mean, you just caused a drought on your own.
Oh, my gosh. $800 worth of drought anyway.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm sorry to hear it,
That's
man.
what I said.
Wow.
No problem. It's one of those things.
Well, what's on your mind, buddy? What you thinking?
Oh, yeah. The illegal immigration. It's going to have to be, we're going to have to change the laws. If you have broken the laws and you've come in illegally, you need to make it so that you can never gain citizenship. And that'll deter a lot of that.
It will.
And then,
but I'll be honest with you, I think some of them just come here to work. They could care less about being a citizen. They just want to make some money and send it home.
Well, and that's the other thing. We have to make it illegal for you to hire an illegal alien.
Yeah.
With under penalty of going to jail and everything, and thousands of dollars fines, because if you can't cut off the money to these people and cut off the work, then they'll go home on their own. Otherwise, you'd have to have the National Guard going around rounding these people up, because how many millions have we got now?
Oh, we've gained over 4 million just as Biden took office.
Plus the rest that was already here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, and that's what's going to have to happen. I mean, you're going to have to make it so that there's no welfare programs. We can't, if you're here, you don't get no money spent on you, and even the children, we're going to have to make it to where if at least one of your parents isn't a natural or a citizen of the United States, then you are not a citizen of the United States.
That would be a landmark change. And I'll tell you what else I think we ought to do that would be quite the deterrent. They have, there's a whole, like a $1 billion industry of wiring money home. There's various means by which you can wire money home to Mexico, Guatemala, South America, Central America. And if there were a means by which you could put tariffs or taxes on wiring to those countries, you would change the entire dynamic. It would be a totally different world, because they wouldn't want to pay the taxes, or for that matter, we would be able to use some of those monies gained to help pay the damages of them coming across the border. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to know just how they get away with, not paying taxes and everything. Everything's on the table, and that they talk about it's not a crime to cross the border, but it is criminal to work without taxes and stolen identities.
Well, more to come, Jeff. Hey, I got another caller on the line. Let me go grab them real quick. Good luck with your water line, buddy. All right, line 2, Sparky from Harvard. Sparky, how you doing, bud?
Hey, great show, Phil and Boomer.
Thanks, man.
I'll tell you what the Democrats' plan for the southern border is, and it's as plain as the nose on your face. Let them in, open the borders wide open, lie constantly to the American taxpayers about how secure the border is or what your intentions are, steal elections after elections like the chicanery that we see in Arizona, and get to the point in your power where you're able to grant every one of them citizenship and the right to vote. And then your hope is after giving them free health care, free stuff, free housing, they will vote Democrat for life. And I tell you what, it's a long game. Right now they're intensifying this long game. If they succeed, there will never be a Republican, a conservative, or a Christian ever elected to any office in this land. And this $30 trillion in debt is going to be $300 trillion in debt. They don't care, these people in Washington, D.C., what they're doing to these people, how they're being raped by the coyotes, how they're being murdered. They just want power, and they want this money in their pocket that keeps coming from their crooks everywhere else in the world but here.
I think you just nailed the Schumer plan. I mean, that's pretty much it. The only thing you're missing is, don't you know that those people are here to save us from ourselves? Because illegal immigrants are necessary because, in Chuck Schumer's words, we're not populating our country the way we used to because people are having fewer babies. Therefore, we need to import some more people, and illegal immigration is the way to go. That was a speech he gave a few weeks ago.
Yeah, well, whatever helps the distinguished gentleman sleep at night. I don't know if Satan sleeps at night, hanging upside down with his bat wings furled behind him. But I know how Nancy Pelosi sleeps at night. It takes some chemicals. But anyway, hey, you have a good evening. I hope the Republicans in the House manage to grow a pair and help stem the tide on this, because we can't let this happen. It's happening right before our eyes, and these smirking crooks in Washington are laughing all the way to the bank as they flood this country with illegals.
Thank you, Sparky. Appreciate you, man. Blessings.
Bye-bye.
All right. Hey, continuing this theme right now, and wow, that was a great call. National Review has a piece. National Review has a piece that came out 2 days ago, December 13th. It says, over the weekend, a massive caravan of thousands of illegal migrants, mostly from Nicaragua, crossed the border into West Texas in a stunning surge that shocked immigration agents. If it's shocking them now after all they've been through, that is saying something significant. It says by Monday, over 5,000 illegal immigrants had arrived at the Border Patrol's Central Processing Center in El Paso. They estimate that about 2,000 came to the U.S. each day, the largest influx reaching 800 to 1,000 migrants, and that's in one border crossing. 5,000 in one weekend at one border crossing. It says El Paso's predicament, which included 53,000 apprehensions in October alone, is the worst among U.S.-Mexico border towns. Although all are bearing the brunt of the raging border crisis, so far in 2022, we've had 2.378 million migrant encounters on the southern border. A guy who runs a rescue mission in El Paso, a guy named Blake Barrow, said, this is nothing I've ever seen in the last 25 years. He said, honestly, I don't know how to address this problem. The situation is overwhelming us. This is unbelievable. And listen, here's the deal. Part of the reason why I did this today was because Title 42, the Trump administration plan to prevent the influx of people from certain countries based upon COVID protocols, allowed us to turn them around and to send them back across the border, is ending. Now, the pandemic is over. Biden himself can't deny it because he said it's over. We're looking at lifting vaccine mandates on our military, the last bastion of the mandate. So I get it. Title 42, I get it. But understand this. It's like a near panic situation right now among the Customs and Border Patrol agents. They're recognizing what's about to happen. They believe that they're looking at the potential for up to 14,000 a day crossing the southern border illegally because the word has gotten out that Title 42 is over and they can come on in unfettered. In December, this article from National Review says, it was reported that President Biden and senior Democratic aides were considering a strategy resembling a Trump-era transit ban. Let me just go ahead and say this. It is way past time for you to be considering something. You should have considered it before you took office 2 years ago. But the only thing he considered then was, how do I undo anything Trump did? Anything with Trump's signature on it, I got to undo. Give me an executive order. I'll undo it. I don't care. What are the results? I don't know. Trump did it. We got to undo it. That's all. That was the only thinking they had. We're 2 years in. We've grown the population by a full percentage point of illegal migration. We've got a mass migration event prepared to happen on the southern border. It's overwhelming the local border towns, by their own words. And the reporting here is, it was reported that President Biden and senior Democrat aides are considering a strategy that would bar asylum seekers. Where's that other article I got? Hang on a second. I got a piece here. Where did it go? The one about the 14,000. Here it is. Biden administration prepares for a surge of migrants ahead of the end of the Trump-era border policy. It's not funny. CNN.com. As administration officials considered a border proposal reminiscent of the Trump era this month, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called Ron Klain, President Biden's chief of staff, with concerns. With concerns. The wording of this is maddening. CNN. As administration officials considered a border proposal. Considered a proposal. Think about how nebulous these words are. Here, let me read you this other paragraph later in the article. It's a dynamic that is played out as the Biden administration intensively prepares for a moment officials have long grappled with how to navigate. They're not intensively preparing for squat. They have long grappled. They have done nothing. This CNN article is a joke. The very idea that you could say, all right, throughout, administration officials have stressed the only viable long-term solution will come from congressional action. No, it won't. You know full well you are allowed to implement certain executive policies on the border just because, and you've chosen not to. All right, I got a quick call real quick. Line 4, Brian from Huntsville. Brian, how you doing, buddy?
Mighty fine and mighty quick here. Texas and everything declared this as an invasion, and you talk about 14,000 people per day.
Yeah.
And Arizona is stacking up crates and everything to try to make a wall.
Yeah.
It is an invasion.
It is an invasion. It's absolutely an invasion. You're so right, man. Good point.
Sir. You have a good one.
Let me take Lee from Huntsville real quick before I run out of time. I'll take one more call before we go to the break, Boomer. Let's do that. Line 5, Lee from Huntsville. Lee, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Wanted to point out that this type of a literal invasion, which is what it is that is the plan. They want to import an essentially to flood the country with, I don't want to say lower class in this way, I just mean lower wage earners, and have this permanent underclass that works doing certain jobs and things for, all the basic type positions. They want to shrink the middle class and increase the lower class. That is their whole goal. They want to shrink the middle class to where there's very little buffer in between the upper class and the lower class. Wow. And that's all by design. And they want to create a permanent class of renters, which is why you see all these companies, these hedge funds purchasing houses for cash. People can't even get houses because they come in and they make these offers and they buy them for cash, and people can't compete with those type of offers. So they own more and more and more and more houses here, and they rent them. So they want this permanent renter class. They want this permanent underclass. They want this permanent, essentially, servants class. And that is the goal, and that's a very globalist viewpoint. That is how so many of these countries operate. There's a very small upper class and a huge lower class and an almost vanishing middle class.
Wow.
And but the middle class is what has made America great over the years.
Exactly. You're exactly right. The middle class is the backbone of America's economy. Lee, got to go to a break. Yeah. Great call as usual. Thank you so much. Boomer, take us to a break, brother. I ran about a minute long to make sure I got Lee in there, but man, I'm telling you, we're about to hit epic levels. It's so maddening to watch their compadres in the media say they're grappling. No, they're not. They've been long-standing planning. No, they haven't. 2 years in, they got no plan. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Making it cool to be a conservative. All right. Hey, listen, I got to tell you guys before we go any further, Just Love Coffee Cafe. Let me just suggest something to you. The food there is great, but so is the environment. That's one of the things I've been to both locations in our listening area, one on Hughes Road in Madison out towards City Hall, the other one on South Parkway in Huntsville down there by Whole Foods. And both of them are really designed for you to be able to hang out if you need to. You know, bring your laptop, do a little work. They've got these like little desk stations on the side at the Parkway location where you can sort of, you know, prop up your computer and do some work. The Wi-Fi is available to you. Hang out there with some friends. Read a book. I like, to me, the most comfortable of all of them is the one out in Madison, too. It's actually got shelves with, like, you know, if I recall, it has books and games on the shelves. So, yeah, just check it out. Just Love Coffee Cafe. It is designed for you to have a place to go. Great coffee, great food. You can do like what Charlene calls the treat coffees, the cappuccinos, the lattes, the espressos. They got the award-winning dry roast. They can make you a fresh cup of steaming hot black coffee, light roast, medium roast, dark roast. But yeah, the environment, I thought I'd mention that today. The environment in both locations, it's designed for you. Just Love Coffee Cafe, 2 locations, Hughes Road in Madison, South Parkway in Huntsville. And do me a favor, tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. I would appreciate it. All right, listen, we're going to wrap this section up. I will say this, the phones rang during the break. The text line blew up. I've got a whole string of texts I can't even get to right now, and I apologize because I'm looking at, I love it when our listeners are texting in because it's like super activity, but I can't even get to, I mean, I'm looking at Harold from Huntsville, Paul from Athens, Jay from Hartselle, Moon Pie from Madison, John from Huntsville, John from Brownsboro, Raven from Russellville, JT from Lacey Springs, Mike from Athens, Scott from Huntsville, Chappie from Madison, Allie from Athens. I mean, I'm looking down the list. I didn't even get to all of them.
I know. It's awesome, though. I loved seeing that. And we also had a call that called in, and it was Mark, and he was just saying, hey, just so everybody knows, the amount of illegals coming across the border over the past 2 years is greater than some states, like 5 million. That's bigger than Alabama.
Oh, that's a perspective.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
crazy to think about.
That was Mark from Athens?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Wow. Not a good wow. Wrapping this up, though, y'all. Suddenly we have a border. You know, it's amazing how many are suddenly reporting on this. One of the things that's so irritating, too, is Democrats are starting to pay attention. We got to do something. Gavin Newsom. Fox News. Gavin Newsom torched for his border visit amid 2024 speculations, calling it meaningless political theater. California Governor Gavin Newsom is facing backlash after his recent visit to the U.S.-Mexico border, where he failed to meet with border agents regarding the ongoing surge of illegal crossings. In a video Monday, Newsom stated he crossed the border and met with local officials, international humanitarian leaders, and migrants. Just here to get a deeper understanding of what the world looks like pre-Title 42 and what it'll look like post-Title 42, said Newsom. Like he didn't know? Well, you know, one of the Fox Business hosts, Kennedy, she dismissed it as this meaningless political theater. She said that what he's doing is trying to contrast himself with Vice President Harris, saying, hey, look at me, I'm actually at the border, I'm in Mexico. He's a border sanctuary city dude, all right? He's a sanctuary state governor. He's the one who I said earlier has been one of those who has been baiting the hook to lure the fish in. He's the reason why so many of them cross over. One of the largest populations of illegal migrants in the world are in California. They're giving state IDs to illegal migrants in California. They're giving them state benefits. They're calling them sanctuaries. They're refusing to coordinate with ICE. They've got people being murdered in California because of illegal immigrants that are criminals that are allowed to run unfettered. And then he wants to pretend that everything is going to be, wow, I had to go check this out. Wow. Well, yeah. How about that? Meanwhile, Customs and Border Patrol, townhall.com, says they are literally on pins and needles right now as thousands of people line up at the fence to be let in because Title 42 is going away. It's an invasion, folks. It really is. All right, Right Side Ruffians, take heart. We will continue to monitor. Boomer and I back here tomorrow at 2. It'll be Friday then. You guys have an amazing night. We'll see you then.